Hi, my name is Judi Friedman, and I'm chairperson of PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy. And when I talk about energy, I mean squeaky clean energy. We are very concerned about health issues from fossil fuels, from nuclear power, from fracking. We're very concerned with democracy, with grid security. We're very concerned about money. And this program is really very much about health and also about money. And I'm really celebrating our guests today. They are from Celebration Contractors, and I'm celebrating them because they're doing a beautiful job of bringing clean energy into reality. They're taking ideas and making them into something you can see and live in and understand, and it is also very beautiful. So our first guest is Bill Freeman. Bill, can you tell us what you do and how in the world did you get involved in this wonderful aspect? I mean, there are many builders around, lots of builders, but you're doing something very special. What are you doing and how did you get going in that?
Well, thank you first for having me here and giving me the opportunity to talk about something that I really love and I'm passionate about, and that is energy conservation and energy conservation in building homes.
You build homes?
We build homes, we build buildings, we apply the principles of energy efficient building to structures that are primarily for residential homes.
And why should people care about that?
Well, as you know, global climate change is becoming a reality. We are all striving to save energy and in our cars and things of that nature, but we really need to focus on how we can save energy in our buildings, because between commercial, industrial, and residential, that makes up a very large segment of the pie of energy consumption in the world. And particularly in the United States, we're one of the larger energy users in the world.
So what got you interested in this kind of construction?
Well, my background is I was a geology student and a geology major, and I graduated as a geologist and worked in that business for a while. And I think the advent of going through the earth sciences and all those aspects of what to get that degree, I became very conscious of the environment and was always very interested in it. And after I kind of got out of that business and matriculated into the building business, it stuck with me, and I've always sort of been, had that little voice in the back of my head saying...
So how are you translating your environmental interest into building?
So the reason I think that we, got here with you is that we recently built a passive house, and
passive house. What does passive mean? It doesn't run around? I mean, what does it mean, passive?
And it's not passive. That's the thing I like about it. It's not passive. It's aggressive. It aggressively saves energy, and it aggressively... It's a prescriptive way to build a house. It's more of a European model that was sort of fine-tuned in Germany and has spread out throughout the world, and now is becoming more popular in the U.S.
So this is a special kind of building. It's not passive solar. It's not passive ho-hum. It's a special kind of building.
It's a prescriptive. All building is prescriptive. In other words, there's a process you go through. If you go through the regular building code, you do this and this and this, and you have to have R value here and whatever. So with passive house, it has a very finite way of examining every aspect of it. And there's probably about 5 key components. You have air sealing.
Air sealing. Okay. Now this also applies not only to a new house, but this could apply to a retrofit of an existing house.
Absolutely. They have 2 paths. You have inner fit, which is a little lower bar, but not very, because you're obviously dealing with an existing structure. But you go through this process of air sealing.
Okay, air sealing. Big.
Big. I would say number 1. Number 2 would be insulation.
Insulation.
You really... insulation is the most affordable and least amount of work you ever have to put into your house, because once it's there, you don't see it, you don't do anything to it, you have no maintenance. So insulation.
So that's when I go to Sweden and I'm in a house and the walls are this thick. They knew about that long before we did.
This is correct. And I think when we get to some of the slides that we have, you'll be able to see that.
So insulation, air sealing,
windows,
windows,
high efficiency windows, minimum triple pane.
Triple panes. Triple panes.
Right. So and the on the market now, there's all the major manufacturers like Anderson, and those are all starting to get into this because they see the trend and they see which way it's going. There's a big difference between a double pane window and a triple pane window.
So if I'm inside on a cold day and I touch that glass inside, will I not feel cold?
You will not, and that's what the big difference is. It will, there's again within that passive house method, prescriptive method, it has to be on a 7-degree day outside. You cannot have a lower temperature on the inner glass than 64 degrees. So you don't feel that, when you're in an older house, you feel that cold radiating when you're in a passive house or a net zero house that has some of those aspects built into it, like triple pane, because we do that in regular housing as well. You don't feel that cold.
Okay, so now we did insulation, air sealing, we did triple pane windows.
Now we have one of the other really important things is air quality.
Air quality.
That really hits on health. And so what we have to incorporate is a mechanical ventilation system called an ERV, and that stands for Energy Recovery and Ventilation. And what that does is you take air from the areas where you have moisture, like your bathroom or odors, and your kitchen, and areas that are washing the laundry room, and you take the air out of there and you exchange it with fresh air coming in the building, and you place it in the places where you're living, your bedrooms, your dining room, your kitchen, your living room. Those are where you're going to be, want the fresh air. So this allows your house to have the same essential air quality as the exterior or the outside.
And so, but then the fifth one is?
The fifth one is thermal bridging.
Thermal bridging.
That's kind of I think a good example would be if you looked at a thermos, and you know how a thermos works. There's an inside and an outside, but there's that gap in the middle where they don't touch. And that is the part where it's bridge free. So you don't have a contact between the inside and the outside. So when you put the hot or the cold in here, it doesn't leave through the thermos. Whereas if you have a coffee mug, which is your normal thing, it's touching on both sides.
So if I were a tiny person, I'd
live in there. Yeah.
And I'd have an ERV system.
Yeah.
And
and we actually look at the way a house is as though it was a thermos in our minds. We think, how can we make this house like a thermos?
Well, also I want to thank you, Alicia Dolce, for coming. You're Director of Communication.
I am.
For Celebration Contracting. And how are you feeling about clean energy and building and the progress we're making?
I think that's a great question, and in one word, I would say inspired. It's looking at how building and green building has really evolved since the early sort of. I think we've all heard Energy Star. We know what Energy Star is. We're familiar with Energy Star appliances, for example, and of course, homes can be certified as Energy Star, which means that they do save money or save energy than a typical home built to the state's
here
building
we are
standard.
Back to money again.
Correct.
And health also, because they're not as polluting.
This is correct. And so what I've really seen is that the science, if you will, and the products and the practices keep getting better and keep evolving to the point where you can now, you hear terms like a net zero home, for example, where a home is now so energy efficient to begin with. You take that aspect and you combine it with a renewable energy source. You mentioned solar quite a bit. And now you have these two things working together as a system so that essentially a homeowner experiences over the course of a year no energy cost, if you will.
Because energy cost. What a beautiful idea.
It is a beautiful idea. And when you see these sort and this isn't George Jetson, this isn't this isn't something out there that's so fantastic. This is happening now.
This is happening
and
now.
We're building and creating it now.
Okay,
for many clients.
Bill, I'm going to ask you to prove it by showing us some pictures of what you're talking about.
The first slide is kind of just more of a visual, humorous slide, it kind of gives you the history of heating and cooling, if you will. So on the far left of my left, it's 19th century. You basically had fire, and that was what you used. And then when you came into the 20th century, all the industrial complexes and things came together and made all these devices that, we're going to heat your home and cool your home and do all these things. But they didn't really work together. They weren't in a cohesive, thought-out way. And then you get into the passive house model, and now we take all of these things, we improve the building to the point where all of these things shrink down in size and become much smaller and use much less energy, and they are much healthier. So the man in the middle is the end there is dancing because he's getting free heat from the sun, he's getting fresh air through the ERV, and he has to use a tiny little heating system to keep his house warm and cool.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So,
Beautiful. That is a very good example. Can you show us about some of the details of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. The next slide, I believe, is showing this. I really like this perspective because this perspective gives a real picture of the insulation, the rafters, the ERV system, which takes the stale air out of the house, brings the fresh air into the house, and this creates the envelope, which is very important for the process to have this perfect building envelope. And
of course, the old houses have lots of ventilation. They don't need it because the windows leak, the doors leak, the walls leak. So when you have a tight house like this, you have to have some way to move the air, and that's very important.
Correct, but I think that even over and above that, I think that what you're actually really doing is, I think every house should incorporate some sort of air exchange, because your house becomes very stale just from the materials that you put in it, the foam in your cushions in your couch, the rugs on your floor, the cooking fumes.
And the toxics that some of the building materials give off.
Things. And all the little things you use that you shouldn't probably be using to clean things. We're a little too much of that, these days.
Too fussy.
I agree.
But what's interesting, Bill and I go to a lot of workshops and seminars, and I think you can't underscore the importance of indoor air quality.
Yes.
When you hear statistics like we spend 90% of our time indoors.
Right.
So filtering out allergens and toxins and things that really irritate people, where we see asthma and allergies at all-time high levels. This is a quality of life issue.
It is, and here again we're talking about health and money, because if you get sick, it gets expensive.
Exactly.
And the healthier you are, the less you go to the doctor, the more productive you are as an individual. Obviously, all comes down to money and health.
Right.
So when you put this kind of system behind the walls, and you can do this in a remodel, as you said earlier, a remodel or a new home. It doesn't have to just be in a passive home. You're really, that's what's so inspiring. And you said, what we're celebrating here is, we are celebrating that because it's such a tremendous health benefit to be able to offer people.
And what else specifically?
I had a couple other slides.
We'd love to see.
It's good stuff. So this is the mechanical room. It's right in the middle of the house, essentially on the upstairs.
It's upstairs.
Upstairs.
In kind of a closet?
Well, it's a little room that we built, like a closet, if you will.
And what do we see there?
So what you see on the right there is the ERV, and you can see the two pipes that go out above it. Those are the air intake and the exhaust. And then the machine next to it is the geothermal heating and cooling system.
Geothermal. Now what in the world is geothermal?
So geothermal is one of the renewables that we get to use in our world because you're using the energy that is inherently latently stored in the earth. So underneath your ground that you walk on, the Earth's temperature is very consistent, 50 to 55 degrees up in this part of the world. It gets warmer as you go south. So you basically have a system in which you can take energy from the Earth or give energy back to the Earth.
I can get heat from the Earth, and I can heat my house. What about cooling?
So the same thing. Actually, geothermal is even a bit more efficient when it comes to cooling because it's obviously cool down there. So you're not working as your delta between your desired temperature and your actual starting temperature is much shorter or smaller.
So the heating and cooling system that you're talking about is a geothermal.
Yep.
That's very interesting. And I think you can also do it with water. Can you not?
Well, it's
with a well.
Well, it is in a well. We call it a bore because a well is traditionally for drinking, but there's a couple different systems. The one that we predominantly use are vertical systems. So we drill a borehole. For example, in the passive house, we couldn't even find a geothermal system small enough to run that house. So we actually had to put the only one that's a little bit, we had to kind of actually slow down the system
The house is so efficient.
so efficient.
Unbelievable.
Isn't that, that's amazing.
And I think that I had some more, I can't remember, I have to see what the next slide is. I love this one. So this gives you a perspective on the windows. You can see that they're pretty robust. If you could get up close, you could see that they were triple pane. And if you look at where the window meets the wall, you'll see there's quite a space there. And that's what we call the thermal bridge. So the window sits on the outside, and there's another wall on the inside that we build just around the perimeter that gives us that thermal break and that 12 inches of wall space that we then fill with dense pack insulation to get. We strive for about an R45 wall.
Wow.
So the code is like 21. So we're almost, we're more than double.
Wonderful.
And so you get an idea of, how all that ties together. And you can see a little tape on the floors. And if you could see more clearly, you would be able to see that all the seams on the outside of the building, where all the plywood seams are all taped with a very durable and unique piece of tape that actually is the air sealing. So the plywood and the tape create the air seal.
Beautiful. And those windows look really easy to wash.
They are extremely easy to watch and extremely easy to operate. Unfortunately, they're both open the regular way, but when you close them, you turn the handle a half a turn, and then you can tilt them out where they just tilt out from the top about 4 inches. So you can have this beautiful ventilation in your house and not have to worry about rain or wind or all these things.
And what else are you doing?
I think we have a couple more slides.
That's
there we go.
beautiful.
So this is what this is meant to show you is we have a beautiful solar array on the roof. We have some nice shading, solar shading along the front where the porch is and up above the bedroom at the top there. And we have all these beautiful things in this house. This house is extraordinarily energy efficient. It's a net zero house.
Okay, this big, it's a good-sized house, lots of windows, and you're telling me it's a net zero energy house?
Yes.
That is just unbelievable.
And the windows, in the passive house model, the windows are not a negative. They're a positive. So we figure out a way to capture all the sun's heat in the winter and shade out the sun in the summer. And this is the southern aspect. And so windows become a plus for the process. So you can see that you can build a beautiful house that uses no energy and still is stunningly handsome.
I think this is the most amazing slide I could ever imagine. It's
the
beautiful.
next one. The next one is the
it
most
even better?
amazing slide.
I can't wait.
So,
oh my goodness.
So here's a picture of a row house. So you have a bunch of houses in a row. It's pretty easy to pick out the passive house one. It's the one in the middle that is absolutely keeping all of its energy in the house. So it's a cold night out. All these other houses are radiating that energy out of the building. And here's this little teeny passive house in the middle doing its job quietly, efficiently, silently, and it's not difficult to do. I always think of these practices as common sense things that are done very precisely. So you just have to think about what you're doing, about how it affects the building process, and then do it. And it's not any more expensive than regular traditional construction. It really is not getting it. It is coming down to the point where the differential between the little bit more that it costs, 5 to 8% more, is offset so quickly by the energy that you save. It's just
so you're saving money.
You're saving money.
Maybe spending a little more on certain details.
Tiny.
But you're going to save money in the care and upkeep of the house, the energy used in the house. So it's a money issue and a health issue. And the thermal imaging, I should think, would be good for any house.
Yes, I think that it's a good way to look at where your house is. And I think at some point in time it will become something that will have to be done to get in the future, hopefully, when you get a building permit, you have to then image your house to prove that you've done your job.
So the electricity is supplied by photovoltaic panels on the roof, and the hot water is geothermal.
No, what we did in this house was we used a heat pump water heater, which is an electric water heater, but it runs off of a heat pump, so it's super efficient. And so we made this house all electric. And I know in the days gone by, people would be very nervous about that. And I still get a little, kind of like, And once we sort of explained how it all ties together with the solar panels and the electrical side of it, and the efficiencies of the geothermal, and the basic efficiency of the house, the way it lives and breathes, then people are much more comfortable with it. And also, I just want to point out that with the materials that we're building houses with now, they last so long, and we control moisture so much better than we used to, and all these products like the cement siding that we're using will last so long that we really need to be conscious about what we're building, because it's going to be a couple hundred years sitting there like that, where the only thing you might replace is your roof.
And we need to think about toxic materials too.
Oh, that's a whole nother, there's a whole level. Here's Passive House, you go up to the Living Building Challenge, and it takes...
the Living Building
Challenge. The Living
Challenge?
Building Challenge is a whole another prescriptive method for building, in which you really look at every single item that goes into your house, from a chemical standpoint, and from where it comes from. So there's geography involved. So what you have food miles. Well, these are material miles, and so you really want to look at all those things and detoxify your house, basically, because we haven't looked at that enough. We really need to focus on.
Because I think some houses are toxic sites. Is that correct, Alicia?
I think that's fair. And as we said earlier about indoor air quality, there are homes, and Bill mentioned moisture. People suffer from reactions to mold, presence of mold in homes. I mean, when you focus on what's behind the walls, as he showed you in some of the slides, you can see how it really impacts the quality of living in that space.
Absolutely.
And as you keep coming back to this theme of healthy, we're creating healthier spaces for people to live in.
Well, we want to thank our viewers very much for listening to this program, because we want you to be healthy and we want you to be wealthier by saving money, saving energy, and we really do celebrate this wonderful Celebration Contracting company. They're doing a great job in building clean, efficient, healthy homes that make sense, that use common sense. And I thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you, viewers, for listening
really
to this
appreciate
program.
it. Thank you so much.
It's been a wonderful education for all of us, and the slides are great.
Thank you.
I especially enjoyed the the thermal imaging, and especially the one about the row houses, which is the thermal imaging. But it's just a beautiful way to address it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Focused on